Welcome back to the Boise Beat. Today, we're vibing with the true rock and roll renaissance man who has spent more than 4 decades shredding guitars and singing his heart out. Born over a liquor store in Jersey City and now holding court on Jersey Shore, Jersey Johnny Flora mixes the soul of Eric Clapton and the grit of ZZ Top into a one-man power show. So settle in for some moments of stories, laughs, and bluesy guitar magic as we dive into the world of Jersey Johnny. What's happening, brother? How you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Loving the beautiful weather.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for hopping on here with me and chopping shop with me just a little bit here. As mentioned, I came across some of your music and I thought, man, this guy's extremely talented on the guitar. Also, your vocals was something that captured my attention, and then I started digging into you a little bit and realized, man, you got some character, you got some personality. And I'm like, let's find out who Jersey Johnny is and what he's all about. And so thank you again for jumping on here with me and spending some time. We're going to allow listeners an opportunity to get to know you a little bit. But I got to start out with this story that I heard, and that was about you being born above a liquor store in Jersey, right? Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. And
Yeah, okay.
back in
Tell
them
me about
days,
that.
well, it was 1951, October 10th, 1951. Also happened to be Young Kipper. I was born on Young Kipper that year.
Oh, wow.
And my mother, she didn't make it to the hospital, and they would have a midwife deliver babies in them days. So I was born over Milt's liquor store. And
Gotcha. Okay.
it was, I don't remember all the details, but that's how I made it into the world.
Wow, what a way to make a grand entrance right over Milt's liquor store. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
that whole area is totally transformed now. Downtown Jersey City is like the Gold Coast. It's just an extension of Manhattan. So
hmm,
it's gone through quite a transformation.
wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So you've been in the game for a minute in this area, primarily right in this regional space around Jersey and whatnot. And so over 4 decades, I understand that you've been playing and just
Long time.
establishing your craft, right?
Yeah.
I want to, yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about that element of it. Like, what got you started first of all in music? How did that come about?
Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, Cream.
Mm,
When I first went to high school and I was a sophomore, I wasn't even playing the guitar at that point. And, the Vietnam War was going on. So I was thinking more along the lines of, signing up and volunteering for the Marine Corps.
mm-hmm,
And then I had a friend, John Fox, who went to high school with me. And, everybody was grouped up in the same classrooms based on their last name. So, I sat next to John Fox and I sat next to Frankie Infante
mm,
because of our, last names. And Frankie Infante, he went on to be the lead guitar player for Blondie. We were good friends back then. And I had a loft where all the bands in Jersey City would practice. And he had a band called World War III, and then eventually that band broke up. I auditioned for the part, and Frankie went on to be the lead guitar player in Blondie. But
wow.
John Fox, who sat next to me when I was a sophomore, said, I got tickets to go over to Hunter College to see this new guitar player just came over from England. And
Mm,
he's a big sensation now. Now,
mm,
some of my friends had bought their records in them days, and they actually thought that Hendrix's first album, Are You Experienced, there was like something wrong with it. They bring back the
uh-huh,
store and they would, what's all this stuff? I never heard anything like this before.
mm,
But it blew me away. So we went over to see Hendrix in Hunter College, and I actually bought a little tiny miniature reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I
mm-hmm,
taped it. And the first song he did, I believe, was Spanish Castle Magic. And
mm,
that was it. I never seen anything like that in my life. I ran and bought a guitar. I was working in A&P at night after high school to make a few bucks, and I bought I think it was a Harmony, an old beat up Harmony guitar for $5, and I just played it morning, noon, and night.
Mm.
Then John Fox came back to me and said, "Look, there's another band coming to Hunter College for the first tour in the United States called Cream." And I went to see them, and I stood in front of Clapton and Baker and Jack Bruce, and that was it. I was sold. I said, I also had an interest in cars because I, worked in body shops. So I said, guitars and cars, that's it for me. I'm not going in the Marines. I went to Woodstock and a whole bunch of things. I mean, I saw just about every great act that, classic act there was. But I followed Clapton around. I really kind of stalked him in a way. I went to all the shows that were available here, Capitol Theater, anything. I was the guy who always bought the tickets for all my friends in Jersey City to go to the Fillmore. So we were there every week. I was at Jimi Hendrix's Band of Gypsies concert, the midnight famous show that he did. And I remember buying 14 tickets for that up in the front. We were right up in row 4 or something. And that was a masterpiece. So that was my first influences. And then from there, I went in to listen to all the jazz guys. And being in Jersey City, I had access to go over to New York City to sit, in all those, the Blue Note and the Village Vanguard and all those places. So, you can go over there on a weeknight and sit down and lean your elbows right on the piano for Bill Evans. He would be playing there, or Coltrane, or Roland Kirk, and all these guys. I saw all of them. Ron Carter, Chick Corea, you name it. And that's pretty much where all my musical influences came from.
Yeah, well, I imagine over 4 decades. I mean, you've soaked in a lot, and so those early formative years, obviously, we look at them now back where we're at as okay. You were around legends and icons, and you were rubbing, elbows wherever you could to glean from those masterpieces that were being developed before your eyes. And so, a lot's changed, though. I bet in 40 years, right? 40 plus years.
Has it ever?
Yes. Well, I want to hear your perspective on that. Like when it comes to being a multi-instrumentalist, because that's what you are, right? Like you play guitar, obviously, and that might be
my
a
recordings,
signature.
I play all the instruments.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Because I don't know. Some people say it's easy to learn one after you master like the guitar. I don't know how true that is, but how is that you've been able to pick up all these other instruments along the way as well? Like, where do you find the time for that?
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention. So sometimes, when you come through the ranks, you get stuck in situations where you have to basically learn something or improvise. Like, oh, well, the keyboard player quit and we need somebody this weekend. Oh, I better sit down and start learning these chord changes. Or the bass player didn't show up. You better pick up a bass and do something about that. So when you're working 5-6 nights a week over a long period of time, you get stuck in situations like that. And, I could play little drums, and I've done on some of my recordings, but I'm not by any means a master drummer or anything like that. But I have, over the years played the violin, the sax, and picked it up here and there for different things and recordings that I might have to do. But you get thrown into things. Give you an example. I was a house keyboard player at Grandpa's Comedy Club in Staten Island, Grandpa Al Lewis. And I was there for I think 3 or 4 years. And I would open up for the comics and then close for the comics because they wanted to keep people drinking at the bar after the comedy shows. So the owner of the place, he said one weekend he would always have a Christmas show for all the family's kids from the area, that everybody that worked there. And Mario Cantone was scheduled to do the Christmas show. So Paulie called me up and said, Mario's stuck in New York City. You got to go up and do comedy. I said, I never did comedy. What am I supposed to do? He says, you better get up there. I'm going to kill you. So the whole place was packed, and I'm sweating bullets now. And, I went up and I started remembering the Three Stooges and doing some of these little bits and this and that. And then, thank God, Mario Cantone came in and he took over. But point being, you get pushed into situations, and that's how you learn how to do these things.
Well, and it sounds like you're not afraid of the challenge either. Like you almost willingly put yourself knowing that in this space, right? In music and entertainment, there's always curveballs. There's always something that can come up, and it doesn't seem to phase you a whole lot, though, from what I gain.
Yeah, it's the little intangibles that always come up and bite you. It's things happen, it's like the slip of a lip will sink a ship. I mean, you could
Hmm.
have a guitar pick break on you in the middle of a show, and if you're not prepared with different things, strings break, you could spend
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment, and then a little, like a broken nail will throw you out of
Mess you up.
throw you out of
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the tracks that I came across here, Johnny, that you're I don't know if you cover these on occasion, if you do these regularly or not, but some of the names really caught my attention, and I'd like for you to elaborate for me a little bit,
whack.
if you would, about either kind of the songwriting process for some of these songs, or really kind of some theme behind it and what inspired these types of tracks. I want to start with, one of these tracks, the Industrial Captains, if you would. Or actually, you know what? I want to ask you this other one because this one was capturing my attention. Bagladyland. Talk to me about Bagladyland.
Bagladyland is a song that I struggled with for a long time, and I didn't want to be offensive towards people in that predicament, but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to take the listener and pick him up and put the listener in their shoes, the homeless
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
people that are living on the streets. And it always struck me that there's so many homeless people out there, and it saddens me. And my family does a lot to help them. My sisters, and especially, they have an organization. But Bag Ladies are a little different than your common homeless person. They have their own identity. They're magical in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I wrote this song. And I just wanted to pick the listener up and put them in their shoes, and try to give them a vision of what their existence is like. And I think all songs, in one way or another, are designed to do that. Just like an artist
Mm-hmm.
who paints a picture, you have to, there's a picture and a visual of the actual uh, theme that you're trying to get across to people.
Yeah. So for anybody that's never heard of this song or the term before, elaborate for me on what Baglady Land is. How are they different from the average homeless person? You said they're almost magical in a sense. What does that mean?
A big ladies, they're special. Um, they kind of keep to themselves, and I don't think they really consider themselves homeless, although many of them actually are, and they take care of the other people in their surroundings. You'll always see them like feeding people or giving
Mm-hmm.
other homeless people food, or especially like you picture of a bag lady sitting on a park bench feeding the pigeons and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And they know how to get around, they know
Yeah.
how to like navigate their environment. So, and in that way, I think they're kind of special. And they're
Yeah.
loners. They're loners too. You might see them with a pet dog or something like that, but they don't necessarily hang around with all the other homeless people in the places where you normally see homeless people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm asking these questions because it's giving me a sense of who you are as an artist, and what you're trying to help paint for listeners to be able to witness, because you're doing it one way with your lyrics, and I've heard you shredding on some stuff, and I'm like, wow, this guy's phenomenal. And then I see you belt out some vocals, and I'm like, wow, okay, so now he's like weaving in these different pieces together, different instruments, if you would, right, to tell this story. And I found it very captivating just watching some of your stuff. Although much of what somebody might find online may be this one man show type of thing, I also came across, one of your tracks that you were covering, the Steve Winwood track, "Can't Find My Way Home." And I believe you recorded that over at Shorefire Studios, if I recall correctly, or Shorefire Studios.
yeah,
Um, which leads me to believe that you do have this other collaborative side of you, that you work with other um, musicians and artists as well. What would you say is, like, do you prefer the kind of the solo music act, solo artist music act type of thing, or the collaborative approach with other musicians where you get to explore different music and being able to collaborate with them and tap into what they have? Like, what's your preference over the years that you've established?
Well, over the years, I've been in all different combinations of bands, um, and there's just so many. I mean, 8-piece groups, groups with horns, jazz groups, um, southern rock groups, all of that. But as far as recording goes, I made a good living playing music. I worked 5, 6 nights a week in a show band that went up and down the East Coast, and that's where I kind of paid my dues and stuff like that. And but as far as recording goes, that's a very personal thing to me. And
Mm.
other musicians have put their take on it and put their these recordings. The bass lines, the keyboard lines, the guitar, the vocals. Excuse me. I envision them a certain way, and I don't want that to be diluted. Not that I don't enjoy playing with other musicians. I love it. I absolutely love it. I go to jams all the time. I have a new band called Mountaintop. That's a
Mm.
tribute to Mountain and ZZ Top.
Okay.
And I really, really like doing my recording by myself. One song in particular, I don't know if you heard it, Cement Shoes Blues. And I went up to Shorefire one night. I called my cousin. My cousin owns it. He bought it off of Gary Talent, who's Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band bassist.
Mm.
And it's a great, fantastic studio. Like all my friends in Asbury Park area go there. And I went up there one night and I did Cement Shoes Blues. I said, Joey, I want to go up and do this song. And he's a great engineer. He did all the engineering, and I did all the parts on the song. And we went up there in 2.5 hours. It was finished,
Wow.
soup to nuts. So
Hmm.
that's how I like to do it. But to go in a studio and do that kind of stuff for bands is unheard of. They spend hours and hours and hours. You got to be totally prepared before you go in there. Otherwise, you're just holding up the whole process. Even the videos that I made there, I wanted the videos to be live performances and have that feel for a live performance. I didn't want to overdub and splice and do all that kind of stuff. So I went up there with my power trio and we did those live videos of those songs, and we did 3 of them in about 4 hours tops, which is recorded, edited, the whole thing, and that's how I like to do it.
Yeah, you're efficient.
Yeah,
I could say. Well, over the years, I bet you like I mentioned earlier, you can attest to things that you've learned that others maybe haven't picked up on yet, and you've kind of learned some of the ropes here. Because I've witnessed what you just mentioned right now, where somebody comes into a studio, isn't prepared, and then they end up spending 8 hours on something that realistically probably could have been done in 2 or 3 hours, but they weren't prepared. They just showed up and expected something to come out perfect. So preparation is something that people can pay attention to. Along those lines there, because I have to imagine that you've influenced other younger musicians and artists that are coming up. What are some things that you picked up along the way as somebody who's been able to make a living as a musician, been able to travel, and do what you love and play and make a living from it? What would you say is some practical wisdom from those that are in that space right now, or trying to get a leg up and getting themselves established as a playing musician that's also making a living from it?
That's really touchy subject with me. My inner circle of friends and all, they spend tens of thousands of dollars going to see these top historical iconic acts all the time, like Bruce and Paul McCartney and Rolling Stones and whatever, Rod Stewart, you name it. I don't like doing that. And I love Billy Joel and Paul McCartney and Elton John. I adore their songwriting ability and their technique and their recordings. But to me, there comes a time to just kind of give it up and give the younger people a chance. Not that it's going to make a difference to me at all.
Sure.
I'm 73 years old. I've had my fun. But these guys, and it's Paul McCartney, for instance, he's the tippy top of the ladder. It seems they don't want to leave a nickel on the table. I don't know how controversial that is, but if they were all retired at 65, there would be such a gaping space of opportunity for the generations of musicians coming up.
Yeah.
But because all those billions of dollars are just going down the same path all the time, there's no room. I like Mark Knopfler. He's one of my favorite all-time guitar players. I love him. I emulate him. My style is maybe a little bit like that, songwriting and all. And he kind of like realized that and maybe moved to the side a little bit. He's not out there doing constant touring, charging these $1,200 tickets for people to see him. So that's my feelings on the subject. For somebody who's young, coming up with a band, it's like anything else in life, almost like a marriage. Be careful who you get involved with. Be really sure and careful about that. Because so many bands, 9 out of 10, maybe more, break up not because of musical ability, but everybody has a different idea of what kind of direction they want to go in. And then all their personal conflicts come into play. And that's why all these bands, like, they get started, they practice, they get a couple of gigs, they start to get a little head of steam. They got a nice song and they're ready to get out there. And somebody throws a wrench in the act and it's over, so that happens a lot. That happens a lot.
That's great. That's valuable insight right there. For anybody that's been in the space and has seen it, it's true what you're sharing there. You mentioned earlier this new stage, if you would, or era with your own walk, because you said you're in your 70s now, been playing for a long time, and now you've assembled this group with Mountaintop, and it's a tribute band combo of Mountain and ZZ Top. Talk to me a little bit about the inception of that band and kind of what you guys are about.
Well, the idea came to me, and I got a close friend of bassist, Jim, Hank Henry. We've had about 5 or 6 different drummers. We've been working on this project for over a year now. And ZZ Top is very commercially popular. So with a ZZ Top tribute band, it's easy to have that commercial appeal. Mountain is kind of forgotten, but Mountain to me was one of the greatest bands. I saw them up at Woodstock. I was crying over Cream breaking up, and I'm laying up on the mountain, and all of a sudden they came out. I forget, Abby Hoffman or somebody. We have a new band called Mountain. Felix Papalotti, the producer of Cream, and they just woke me right up. I was in love from the first moment. I think they're maybe one of the most underrated bands of all time. They were popular, but not as popular as they should have been. Their songwriting, the playing, the sound, everything, the singing, the showmanship. Felix Papalotti was one of the greatest singing bass players that ever existed. Corky Lang on drums, right up there with all the greatest drummers, and Leslie West on the guitar. So my idea was, 2 of my favorite guitar players are Leslie West and Billy Gibbons. They're not speed demon guitar players that go up and down these scales like crazy, trying to be the fastest guitar player in the world, playing meaningless scales that don't appeal to me or a lot of people. But Leslie West and Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top just played such tasty lines, and it's so enjoyable to sit in front of them or to listen to their recordings. Although Mountain's recordings kind of old and antiquated, and they're not as good as ZZ Top's recordings from a sound standpoint, but live Mountain was tremendous. The tone of Leslie's guitar and the tone of Billy Gibbons' guitar are second to none, and that's what inspired me, the tone. I said, I gotta achieve that tone at a level that's good for clubs and little and tiny stages and bars in the Jersey Shore area without 10 marshals up there blowing everybody's head off and making everybody deaf. So, it took me a while to come up with that format with 2 separate amplifiers and special pickups in the guitar that I built to emulate the sound of those guys. So it's been a technical challenge and a music challenge, but we're there. We're ready to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Man, the more I get to hearing you here, Jersey Johnny, I keep thinking of you being a student of the game. Like you're constantly observing and watching what other people are doing. And when you pick up on something that you find as like masterful craftsmanship, you're like, I'm gonna learn that. I'm gonna figure out a way to do it and embed that into what I'm doing. And I think that's a true marker of somebody that has a passion for what they're doing and really cares about the art itself, the craft of what you're doing. And
Thank you.
I don't know if that's yeah, you're welcome. I don't think if that's a lacking thing in society today or in the realm of music per se. But talk to me about what maybe you've seen transpire over a period of time here with music in general of how it's changed, because I have to imagine that you might even experiment with different genres and maybe some of that stuff's not your stuff that's publicly played or recorded per se. But what are some of the artists or what's some of the music that you're now paying attention to where you're like, wow, this is something that's kind of earth shattering and really challenging the way music is done, kind of like what you've witnessed already and briefly described about.
I'll sum it up in one word: melody. I grew up, and I'm so grateful for this, listening to some of the greatest melodies ever written. All the way from the beginning, listening to Sinatra's big bands and the arrangements from Nelson Riddle and the Great American Songbook. I played in a band that just toured up and down with horns and saxes, and for almost 7-8 years, just doing the Great American Songbook and melodies. There's still some out there, but they're just not like what it was like Ray Charles. So beautiful melodies and over again. The list goes on and on forever. Your song by Elton John and Billy Joel and melodies. And Paul McCartney and the Beatles, melodies. So I see these shows nowadays and it's just vacant. Melody, the musicianship's there and the sound is tremendous and
Yeah.
all these wonderful things are happening and a lot of fanny wagging and dancing around and all kinds of flashy stuff. But I'm always walk out like empty and I say, where's the melody? Where's the knockout melody? I mean, like Whitney Houston, where's the melody? What happened to that? I mean, I couldn't even tell you one song that Taylor Swift does because I don't know, where's the melody?
Yeah. Where is it? What is your take on what happened to it? Maybe that's a big question.
Well, we can go into a lot of different arenas with this, but we've heard the expression, the dumbing down of America. I mean, there's great music teachers out there in the schools, and I don't know if maybe cell phones did it. Maybe the kids are spending too much on cell phones, but sometimes I'll turn on social media and I'll see a brilliant pianist, 13-year-old pianist playing Chopin. And it brings tears to my eyes. I'll see that. I'll start crying. I'll say, "Wow, there is hope." There's no quick, easy fix for this. I remember people ask. I get a lot of requests to take on students, and if I find a good player from a school, I build guitars and custom guitars, and I always donate guitars to schools, to inner city programs. And my son happens to be a musical teacher in Jersey City. And I brought a lot of instruments there. And he'll call me up and say, "Dad, this guitar player, this young kid came in." I said, "John, I'm bringing him a guitar." And the kid plays. He just did a Led Zeppelin song. And he's involved with Little Kids Rock, a great organization. And they do a lot of work all over the country. David Wish is like one of the CEOs of the company. And they've raised tens of millions of dollars for school programs and things like that. And my son was kind of like the MC and an ambassador for the program. So when they did the concerts over in New York City all the time, they had these $1,000 a plate dinners, and they'll have Bruce, they have Lady Gaga, they have the Beach Boys, they have Dion, they have Elvis Costello, you name it, Billy Squier, and Bootsy Collins, they all would come, these people would come to the schools. So, like Lady Gaga, actually, my son did a show with her because, they would put their time aside to help the kids and get involved with Little Kids Rock. It was Clarence Clemens. He was the original founder of the organization. And it's programs like that that help the kids, get involved in music and love music. And, you got to steer them in the direction, the teachers, to show them something, the basics of composition, show them the basics of rhythm and blues and all the great rhythm and blues artists and the chord structures and stuff like that, and get them started, expose them to these types of songs and these beautiful melodies. Don't just put on, tedious songs with, just with beats that, keep pounding beats into their heads. And, that's how I feel. Maybe I'm old and I grew up in a different time period, but I go to these concerts and see more and more young people going to see the classic rock bands like Chicago. I went to see them not too long ago, and they're like fine wine, age with time, with the jazz or, the instruments and the beautiful melodies that they wrote. Yeah. And it didn't cost a lot to see them. It was like, look, I paid $18 for 3 days of Woodstock.
Wow.
Okay, to see all them bands. And I forget how many tickets, maybe 16 or 20 tickets for all my friends in Jersey City. We all went up there in cars. We hoofed it up there. And when we got there, all the fences were knocked down. And they all ran in. And I had the tickets. And I was like, hey, wait a minute, guys. I said, pay them. We don't have to pay. We're going in for free.
Well, yeah, different times, different times for sure. But nonetheless, I think there's wisdom in what you're sharing there, Jersey Johnny. So, another question I want to leave listeners with, for somebody who's coming across you for the first time, never heard of you before, never heard your music before, what would you say is the go-to track that they should go listen to get a best sense of who Jersey Johnny is?
Darkness on the Sunny Side. That's
Darkness on the Sunny Side. Okay.
It leans country and western, but it's a nice melody with nice words. And I always believe that the lyrics and the music should be like a marriage, a happy marriage. You need a marriage of the lyrics and the music together. So both have to like cones rub each other's back. Otherwise, the song don't work. So that's a simple song, but it has some nice steel guitar in it, some dobro and harmonica parts, and and it's got some nice harmonies singing. I thought of like the Oak Ridge Boys when I recorded that. So that's something that's a melody and a good way to get started on my stuff. There's some really complicated things I did too, if they want to go that way. Maybe the Barber of the Bartenders, which is, I wrote the Barber of the Bartenders, a lot of sound effects, a lot of lead guitar playing. But the idea is, it always struck me funny, like, guys would go to talk and tell all their troubles to the bartenders. Who does the bartender go to? To the barber. So that's on, and it's like, it's about drugs and drug dealing and stuff like that. But they'll listen to it, they'll get the hang of it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing with me, Jersey Johnny. It's been a pleasure talking shop with you here on the Boise Beat. Super appreciate you jumping on deck here. Lots of wonderful wisdom and stories that you've been able to share with us, giving us a better sense of who you are as a musician, as an artist, and as a person. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you.
Peace and harmony. Thank you.